Abundant hair growth. Check out this review on skin, hair, and nails from Heart and Soil Supplements by April G. I love this product. My hair is growing in fast and abundantly. I lost 60% of my hair during, I tried other brands. This one works within weeks of starting it. Thank you so much. Though it is strange to have that sort of a hair loss from a virus, like what happened during the pandemic, it's awesome to hear that April's hair is regrowing with skin, hair, and nails from Heart and Soil Supplements that has liver, bone marrow, and trachea and scapula cartilage. Those are special types of collagen that were studied by a physician named John Pruden, a surgeon, and had increased efficacy for wound healing and hair growth in his studies. So those special types of collagen are what we put in skin, hair, and nails from Heart and Soil Supplements. Works for both men and women. Good hair, good skin, good nails, all the biotin and liver. Check us out at heartandsoil.co.co. Our mission is to help you reclaim your birthright to optimal, radical health. This week, I had Jon Venus on the podcast. Jon was on a couple of years ago, right when he transitioned from being a very well-known vegan proponent to eating meat. In the 2 years since then, he's eaten a lot more meat. He actually did a 6-month experiment where he went back to being plant-based. As he talks about in this podcast, that caused a recurrence of all of his symptoms, muscle cramping, joint pains, etc. Recently, he's been eating a lot of meat on the order of what I eat and fruit. Interesting. He's getting some organs too. He's basically eating an animal-based diet. We talk about his experiences, what he observed in the vegan community, the hate that he's gotten from the vegan community. Vegans are pretty carnivorous when it comes to it, actually, guys. And we talk about his kids and what he observed in vegan kids. He has one child who was born when both he and his wife were vegan, and one child, his daughter, who was born when neither of them were vegan. They have different health outcomes and different growth. Anecdotal, but quite interesting. We go through a lot of science in this one, and we talk about why a plant-based diet is no way, shape, or form an optimal diet for humans in any stage of our lives. So enjoy this podcast with animal-based proponent Jon Venus, who's an awesome guy. Jon Venus, thanks for coming back on the podcast, man.
Thanks, Paul, for having me back on.
It's we said before the podcast, your hair looks much longer than the last time I saw you.
Yeah, I'm going for the surfer look, but I'm in the wrong place. We should switch places. I'm in Norway, you're in Costa Rica. Yeah, so not much surfing going on here, but yeah, letting the hair go.
But what is the temperature of the water? Are you near the ocean in Norway?
Yeah, right next to the ocean. I can see it from the window here. The ocean, I'm assuming it's like maybe 13, 14 Celsius or something like that.
So pretty cold.
Like,
do you ever go in it?
Yeah, well, actually, I do the river because like that's even colder. So that's like I'd say maybe 3-4 degrees or something. So it's more like a cold exposure, ice bathing kind of thing. So I prefer the rivers.
Amazing. So people don't know this. We'll get into your story in a moment, but when I was recently in Texas, I have my buddy Liver King, Brian Johnson, has a cold plunge at his house, and he keeps it at 36 degrees Fahrenheit, which is probably 2-3 degrees Celsius. And I went in for 10 plus minutes and I basically got rhabdo. I basically got rhabdomyolysis. I've gone in his cold plunge at that temperature before for 10 minutes, but I think because I've been living in Costa Rica for so long, I went in for way too long and my muscles and my skin were sore for days.
Wow.
So that,
10 minutes is pretty hardcore.
That's my excess cold plunging experience. And now I'm getting a cold plunge here in Costa Rica soon. I'll just be going in for 2 to 3 minutes at maybe the same temperature, but 10 was too much. So we've done another podcast, but for people who don't know you, how would you describe your history in the past? I don't want to take any of the thunder. So what would you say about your position right now? Who are you, Jon Venus?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that in a simple way. But essentially, my online persona, at least, has been very focused on health and nutrition and personal growth. And I would say it started off pretty normal, just me showing gym work and what I was eating, which was a pretty typical bodybuilding bro diet, chicken and broccoli and these things. And then, I went vegan and I focused on sharing my vegan journey online, which nobody was doing at the time, especially in the fitness world. So I was pretty much the first, or one of the first at least, public figures in that space. And I got a lot of traction doing that. And all of a sudden I went from having a few thousand subscribers on YouTube to growing, extremely fast every single week. Started getting, all kinds of business deals, supplement companies sponsoring me, and everything was going amazing. And so I focused on spreading that message of health and fitness as a vegan for 5+ years, and did really well for myself. Didn't experience any negative health issues until that 5-year mark, I'd say. I started experiencing health issues, and I also started noticing many things that were kind of going against my beliefs, that the vegan diet was optimal for human beings and optimal for all stages of life. I was witnessing too many things that were kind of contradicting my belief. And so I started questioning things more and more. And especially after becoming a father, I wanted to take that extra step and make sure that I was doing the right thing for my son. And so I started, reaching out to vegan doctors, because I couldn't personally find any evidence and studies and peer-reviewed research that would satisfy the questions that I had. And so, once I got, the answers from these vegan MDs, nutritionists, PhDs, of which I had access to all of them because I was very well known within the community, did, countless events. And so I pretty much knew everyone, was very well connected. And no studies could satisfy, my questions at all. Actually, I still to this day cannot find one single study that shows a benefit for children in particular, even in adults, for being 100% vegan. And so that was at the point where I stopped and I quit. And that's when I've been in a kind of a limbo ever since then. This happened in 2020, early 2020. And since then, I've been kind of laying low, not talking too much about veganism and nutrition and health, and just been focusing more on health freedom and these things like that. And now, in the last 2 weeks, I'd say I've been sharing more and more about, my thoughts about, vegan nutrition, the consequences a vegan diet can have on children, what I've witnessed myself. And that has kind of brought back a lot of the online hate and bullying and death threats and all kinds of stuff. So luckily I've gotten used to it by now, so it doesn't affect me as much as it did the first time around. But it just feels like it's my my duty, after promoting something so hard for so many years, to not leave people in the dark, because a lot of people still think that I'm vegan and share my picture with all kinds of peoples and carnivores and all these things as proof that you can build muscle and be strong as a vegan, which you can. But being jacked doesn't mean that you're healthy. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've been doing in the online space.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Thanks for sharing that piece of your story. And we spoke on this podcast in 2020, I think shortly after you had begun eating meat again. And I was just reviewing that podcast before this one, and I found a number of vegans online who were lambasting that podcast that we had done together, calling me a supposed doctor when my medical diploma is right behind me right there. And I mean, for people who claim to be empathetic and compassionate, vegans are pretty intense, man. Here's this headline from Plant-Based News. Airhead Jon Venus blasted after he is revealing he is no longer vegan. And then before this podcast, you told me that you had recently, I guess with this ramp up of talking about the concerns with vegan diets for children, especially, gotten more email death threats. I don't understand how a group of people who claim to want to do less harm to animals are willing to say that they will kill you and your family in this email. I don't understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this wasn't the first time. When I came out of veganism in 2020, it was constant. It was, at least 300 plus videos made in the first week on YouTube. It was so bad that even the local radio stations here in Norway were like trying to reach me and talk to me about it on air and stuff like that. It was horrible. And it was like, it wasn't I don't care so much about people wishing death on me and that kind of stuff, but it was really focused on my family and people close to me and these things. So it's one of these things that, kind of gives us a clue and an insight into how these movements, how these activist groups can become too extreme, and how that kind of blinds them to the most basic human emotions, and kind of they just lose compassion, and people will willingly admit in the vegan community a lot of times, especially in the animal rights sector of veganism, they will willingly admit and be proud of the fact that they're compassionate towards animals but not towards humans. A lot of them are anti-natalists. They believe having children is the most selfish and evil thing ever, and they're very anti-human, a lot of them. And this is not everyone, of course. I have many friends who are amazing, cool, plant-based vegan people, but unfortunately it does attract a lot of these extreme types as well, unfortunately.
And we could say the same thing about the carnivore community. I don't think I received even
exactly
a fraction of the hate that you did, but there are many people, I think, in the carnivore community that see my incorporation of plant food, specifically fruit now, as apostasy. They will go nameless on this podcast, but there are many who throw slander at me online, and I just ignore or don't find that to be terribly interesting. But I think it is a statement about humans and how both of us, I believe, have good intentions, and both of us have ended up, I've been carnivore and vegan in my life on very extreme ends of the spectrum. So humans are prone to extremity. And it is interesting how tribal we are, that when we are in a tribe that is so extreme and we leave that tribe, when I eat fruit, when you begin eating meat, the tribes get angry. And it does, I think, reveal some of the problem with this sort of dogmatic, limited thinking in humans. Okay, I have a question for you. So this photo, all these photos when you were vegan, you either have excellent genetics, or there are supplements here, steroids, exogenous testosterone. You tell me. Did you ever use any exogenous testosterone, steroids, anything like that? Or is this just incredible genetics, Jon?
Well, that in particular is lighting manipulation, all these things, because it was a professional photo shoot. So that in particular was definitely an exaggeration, as all photo shoots, fitness shoots are. But no, I've never used any hormones or any steroids. I've always been vocal, person talking against it. I was actually very judgmental towards people who used steroids before, early on in my fitness career. And so I would say my genetics are, they're good. I've met people who have much better the genetics than me, don't do anywhere close to the gym work that I do, and are able to build even more impressive physiques with a lot less work. So, I'm not saying that people, like Cali Muscle or these people that, claim natural are all natural, for sure not. There's a lot of, fake natties, as a lot of people call them. But yeah, for me, I've never had an issue building muscle, and I've always had a lot of accusations. And right now I haven't lifted properly for, over a year, and I still maintain a lot of muscle mass. But this is after 10 years of training 1 hour a day, every single day, and just, always being in a caloric surplus and that kind of stuff. So yeah, my genetics are definitely better than average, I'd say. Yeah.
Maybe you're basically Viking, right? So maybe that's just what it's about.
Yeah, half Viking.
Half Viking. What's the other half?
Brazilian.
Okay,
so
well,
the
there's
other
some
end.
muscle. Yeah. What is your height and weight right now?
My height is hopefully the same as it was before. It's 6'1", 185 centimeters, and my weight, I believe, was 86 kilos, which is about 10 kilos lighter than I was as a vegan, actually. So I'm a lot lighter, like 22 pounds lighter or something.
That's 190 pounds for people that are listening.
Yeah.
Okay, and you were close to 200.
Yeah. Also, I lost most of the weight after I broke my ankle 5 weeks ago. So I've been kind of bedridden So that's probably the majority of the reason.
How did you break your ankle?
Skateboarding.
I think I heard about this. I get it.
Yeah.
You are trying to be a skater. You are trying to be a surfer.
Yeah, my son started showing interest in scooting around and wanted to go to skate parks, and I found it really boring just watching him. So I got back on the board after 14 years, and I have trouble not trying to progress in different things, and tried something that I wasn't ready for, and yeah, not good.
Skating is intense. Okay, you're in Norway. This is not related to veganism at all. What do you do for sunlight and vitamin D?
Well, I just got here, a couple of days ago, and I'm already feeling the the need for sunshine. But here, when I'm here long periods of time, I supplement in case it helps. And although I'm not a big fan of vitamin D supplementation, but I always prefer sunshine. But yeah, I can't really control the weather here yet. I'm not close enough with Bill Gates to make that happen. But
oh, I think we can both agree we don't want that to happen. Bill Gates is trying to seed the clouds and get less sun everywhere, not more. So where are you the rest of the time when you're not in Norway?
Usually in Spain.
Okay.
Yeah. So most of my time, or at least half of the time, I'm in Spain. But since the restrictions, since this thing happened, there's a lot more restrictions there. So we've kind of been spending a little bit more time in Norway because we're literally on the mountains and the valleys, and we have access to good animal foods and meats from the valley here. That as you can tell by all the antlers hanging around, there's a bunch of deer to hunt here. So the quality of food is much better here. The fruits suck, they're all imported and they don't taste good, but at least we have access to fish and wild game and nature, a lot of cold therapy and all these things and fresh air. So yeah, but usually between Spain and Norway, and then before pre Sharona, whatever you want to call it, I spent 1/3 of the year in LA as well.
Okay. I guess it would be hard to get a tanning bed there. I've always thought, people ask all the time, what do I do, Paul? I'm at this high latitude. When I lived in Seattle, I went to a tanning bed. There's a lot of controversy about tanning beds, but I think that one way to sort of mimic outdoor sunlight is to be in a tanning bed, which is going to be UVA and UVB, and then use something like a near infrared device for the near infrared wavelengths. I mean, even in Norway, you're going to get infrared light when you're outside. You're high enough north that there's not going to be a ton of UV. So I think the main thing that people are missing when they're at higher latitudes, depending, whether they're north or south of the equator, is going to be the lack of the ultraviolet light. But it probably would be hard to get a tanning bed, but you could get one of the small vitamin D lamps up there.
Yeah, no, I've been looking a little bit into that, and I've never pulled the trigger on it, but I'll definitely look more into it and probably buy one after you said that.
Okay, so let's talk about your experience shortly, and then let's get into this discussion around kids. I did a podcast last week, actually, where I talked about an article that one of my friends sent me. The 2000 to 2025 dietary guidelines for America actually recommend meat as one of the ideal first foods for infants. So this is really pretty cool, I thought, and forward thinking. I haven't seen much press about it. And they also recommend as ideal first foods iron fortified rice cereals, which are complete bullshit. And we'll talk about this study again, or at least the appraisal of the study. But so you were a vegan for 5 years, you said, and that was when you began to see some health effects. What is your diet like now? And what have you noticed with those changes?
Yeah. So it was 5 years, and then I started eating meat, or I started with eggs and oysters and mussels and these things, and I saw immediate benefits. So my cramping went away, and I discussed this on our first podcast, so I don't need to go into depth. But after that, I believe it was even after the podcast that we did, I went back into trying a plant-based diet out to make sure that I wasn't tricking myself with a placebo or whatever, a nocebo. And I really wanted to make it work. So I went back into a plant-based diet for, I think, 6 months. And then, unfortunately, all my issues came back. So my joints started hurting again. My wrist was like horrible, like it was super painful. And that kind of sealed the deal, for good for me, because, I I did like an experiment where I was, I stayed away from veganism or a plant-based diet. I ate animal foods for, I don't know what it was, like 6 months or something. And I went back into a plant-based diet for 6 months, doing it properly, not, eating a junk food vegan diet, and witnessing a deterioration after, adopting a plant-based diet again, after even, a couple of weeks it started and just progressively got worse. So I feel like I really gave it a go and wasn't, just a placebo effect or something like that. And so since I, officially, quit veganism for good, or a plant-based diet for good, the most consistent thing I've seen is just a general improvement in gut health. So, regular bowel movements, just normal, as opposed to when I was vegan. You kind of normalize just diarrhea, I guess. Like, people think it's normal to just have, like, this watery, wet thing come out of you on a daily basis. And you also normalize just farting all day. It's like, you sound like a firecracker, just like, you're in a group of vegans. Like, it is kind of like, people joke about, like, a lot of people do have this gas issue, unfortunately. And so the digestion was improved immediately. I haven't had any muscle cramps ever since. I have not had joint pain. My slip disc, my back, hasn't been bad ever since, at all. I did break my ankle. I'm sure vegans will say it's because I ate meat. But apart from, the skin tone as well, improved a lot. And I think that's kind of also, actually, when I actually decided to go very meat heavy, as opposed to just having some animal foods. I was eating, let's say a pound of meat every single day. My strength just like skyrocketed. So in the gym, I made PRs. Like, I was lifting, over 310 pounds on the bench press, which I've never done before. And there's no way I could do that in just 6 months prior. So I definitely noticed a huge strength benefit without even working out more. I was working out less, actually, and was the strongest ever. So those are the main benefits that I've seen after reincorporating animal foods. Yeah.
There are also, to be fair, many vegan doctors who have broken ankles doing much less than skateboarding. I believe one broken ankle stepping off a treadmill or on an escalator at the airport or at a mall or something. The carnivore community, I suppose we do take pleasure in pointing out the frailty of vegan bones as well. I think a lot of people would break skateboarding in general, but who knows?
Oh, absolutely.
What about mentally? Have you noticed anything in terms of emotion or any mental changes or not?
Well, that's always very difficult to gauge because, I'm like a personal development junkie. Like, I want to do everything to skyrocket my growth no matter what. And I did that as a vegan as well. And so, but, when you're stuck in one ideology, when you're too attached to one belief system, when you're too attached to an idea, it kind of limits you in several ways. And so because of that, I wasn't as well-rounded, or I didn't, think in the same way as I think right now. In terms of right now, I'm very detached from, I don't have a need of knowing the truth and knowing that this is the exact best diet for human health, and knowing that this is going to be the best thing for my son. I'm much more comfortable in the unknown, and I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to admit that I made mistakes. I'm willing to admit that I don't know everything. I know very little. And in that sense, I've developed a lot, and that's mostly from the humility of just, falling completely into a dark space after, witnessing what happened to me and, other people, friends around me, family, on a vegan diet. It really crushed my a very, very deep belief that I had for so many years. And I had this identity around veganism. So obviously, having your identity crushed hurts, and you go through this, dark night of the soul which lasted a very long time actually. But for every challenge, for every dark moments, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. You spring back up. The harder you fall, the harder you jump back up as well. So definitely, a lot of mental improvements in terms of not attaching too much into to ideologies has helped me a lot with not being disappointed as much as before, I guess.
And then what did you observe in the people around you? This was something that we had talked a little bit about offline. You were at the epicenter of the vegan community for so many people. You were this paragon of what could be achieved on a vegan diet. What did you observe? You said festivals, people with their families and their own lives. This is also quite interesting.
Yeah, so I think the first memory that kind of was a big red flag and a big wake up call, or at least the start of a big wake up call, was when I was in this festival, and this mother wanted me to hold her baby to take a picture, and I did that, and I immediately I just thought something was a bit strange because of the size and all these things, and I asked, out of curiosity, I asked how old the baby was, and the baby was, almost 2 years old. And so, that was the first kind of like wake up call for me, was something was off there. And of course it was one incident, so I didn't, conclude anything. I thought, that can happen on, with whatever diet, etc. But more and more of these things started, coming up. I started being open to receiving that information, to receiving these anecdotes a lot more. And so I was seeing more and more kids, with dental issues, gut issues, growth issues, vision, and no matter how much I try to be balanced and saying, well, this is on any diet, this can happen. There are a lot of, environmental toxins, etc. There's a lot of factors at play, which is true. But, with these people, a lot of times they are the healthiest, like the most health conscious parents that you can imagine. It's not, an average person, an average family. These are people who are religiously watching the top plant-based doctors and doing everything by the book, making sure that their kids are getting all the supplements, all the vitamins, all the protein, the omegas, everything, and still a lot of them were facing some serious issues. And one time, there's this, a case where, some of the kids, didn't make it, and that was really, really sad as well. And so many of these experiences kind of got me to open my eyes, and so yeah, after I started talking with a lot of other vegan families and parents about this, some of who recently, or at the time, had recently stopped being vegan and given their kids animal foods, even if it was just some eggs and milk, they saw immediate gut improvements and that kind of stuff. After trying so many things, seeing vegan doctors, seeing pediatricians, seeing nutritionists, dietitians. And, this is the thing that a lot of people say, oh, you didn't go to experts and that kind of stuff. These people they wanted to make it work. When you're vegan for ethical and moral reasons, like, you really want to make it work. Like, you're not going to just give up, after one red flag. You're going to try everything. But nothing worked. And when they incorporated some animal foods, they saw this significant change. And so those case studies are amazing. They're anecdotes, so a lot of people just throw it out as garbage, as this, the scientific community is not a fan of anecdotes, unfortunately. But there's so much truth in anecdotes, and it's so sad that we dismiss them, because what could be more powerful than a human experience, like a person's actual real life experience? And for some reason, we've in the scientific community, we disregard that as absolute trash. And that is how we get so many inversions of reality reflected in science. I believe it's because we just throw away the one thing that actually represents humanity, and we just, you know, do everything in a strange, numbers based, like all kinds of different ways that we can talk about later, but ways that don't really reflect real life and real human experience. So anyways, I saw a lot of these things happen. And I also saw this in my own family when I started giving myself and my son animal foods. He was doing better. So that's what I've seen. And it's not an isolated case. So many families that I used to know who are not vegan anymore, who used to be popular vegan influencers as well, are don't regret. They haven't gone back to being vegan. None of them, zero. So, that says something.
Yeah, there's a statistic that I should probably clarify, but there's significantly more ex-vegans than there are current vegans, which says something about humans. I did a post yesterday. I was preparing some content and I was looking at weight loss success. And there's a statistic that floats around on the internet saying that 97% of people who go on diets to lose weight gain it all back in 3 years. And I think that when you see statistics like that, when the vast majority of people who try to do something, whether it's losing weight through portion control and calorie control, which doesn't work in my opinion, or try to cut out animal products, don't work as a human, we have to take notice. Even if this is an anecdote, when N equals hundreds or thousands, we can't ignore this, and we have to accept the validity or the value of those experiences. Have you seen this study, multiple nutritional deficiencies in infants from a strict vegetarian community? It's pretty sad, actually. So this is a vegan religious community. They received breast milk until they were 3 months old. Then they were supplemented or replaced with extremely low calorie density preparations, and they were all vegans. All of the infants, which is multiple infants, had protein calorie malnutrition. They had rickets, which is related to vitamin D deficiency, osteoporosis, vitamin B12 deficiency, and others. One infant died, similar to what you observe, sadly, seeing in your communities in the past, while 3 others had uneventful recovery once they had incorporation of meat into their diets. And you can see the infants' labs here. One of the more striking graphics is of the reticulocyte percentage and the hemoglobin in the blood. When they give these infants B12, this is really accepted medical science. There's a massive increase in reticulocytes, which are red blood cell precursors, and their hemoglobin goes up significantly. So there's clearly a B12 deficiency in these kids, which is not surprising. Here's a chest x-ray showing rachitic changes in the ribs, which are connected with vitamin D deficiency, and cardiomegaly, which is an enlarged heart, connected with anemia, which is probably vitamin B12 deficiency anemia. Though if you look at the folate levels in some of these kids, they're also quite low. So it could be mixed folate and vitamin B12 deficiency. An x-ray of an elbow showing edema of the soft tissues, demineralization of the bones with a thin cortex of the bone, and multiple fractures. Just really sad stuff. But this is also echoed in the literature. Though people would criticize you for saying that what you've seen is anecdote, it is actually also present in the literature. But you don't see Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, or Kim Kardashian talking about that.
Yeah, and we can present all the studies that we want, and there are several studies. Even people will, for example, say that this one is old, it's from the 70s, it doesn't count because now they know that you have to supplement vitamin D and B12. But even newer studies show similar things, and it doesn't matter what facts are presented. If you have a very, very strong attachment to a belief, you're not going to be able to see even what's right in front of your eyes. Even sadly, with your own kids, you're incapable of seeing things when your belief and attachment to that belief is at a certain point, and your identity is so wrapped up in it that nothing else would make sense if you let go of it. So it's very sad, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that the anecdotes that I experienced, like I have always tried to be as neutral, as objective as possible, not to let my emotions get in the way. And I know many more people who are omnivorous or just on a Western diet, which is garbage. And I haven't seen any of these issues even in a standard American diet, you know, with friends that I have, and I've seen many more issues with parents and kids who are vegan, even if they're eating a whole foods plant-based diet, and supplementing and doing all the right stuff. So it just doesn't make any sense. Real life is contradicting directly with what people are being told.
Within the vegan communities, what is the rationalization for the enormity of supplements that must be used? I just think, isn't there some intuitive concern that you must supplement with all these things to make a vegan diet sustainable? It doesn't make sense to me. Why should humans have to supplement with that many things? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so you have different camps in the vegan community. You have different doctors saying different things. There's a period of time, and this changes. Like now, many more of them are more willing to say, yeah, you need this and this and this. But traditionally, and even up to just a couple of years back, they've always said that the only supplement that you need as a vegan is vitamin B12. And that is what, you know, many people have said, including Dr. Greger, including McDougall, Neil Bernard, all these kind of heroes in the plant-based community. And now, you know, the vegans who are more, so to speak, science-based, and they kind of are in a different camp to these more holistic vegan doctors. They recommend way more supplementation. They recommend iodine, they recommend zinc, they recommend calcium, they recommend vitamin D, B12, you know, DHA, even iron, sometimes fortification, fortified foods. So the recommendations are, you know, much higher nowadays for people who are, you know, becoming more and more well known in the vegan scientific world compared to before. But yeah, I don't know what I think a lot of people before, when it comes to the B12, they were fed this narrative that B12 was a part of the human, you know, diet through drinking water and through just, you know, touching the soil and the crops and your lettuce and these things, which, you know, studies have shown is just not possible. So yeah.
So I'm going to do something. I'm going to stoop a little low here. This is Neil Barnard. I just want to show these vegan physicians the neck. If this guy fell skateboarding, I have concerns for him. I want to show Michael Greger. So these are the paragons of health for veganism. I'll let people make their own decisions. None of them seem to be able to retain significant muscle mass. What is Dr. McDougall's first name?
John
McDougall. So what's that?
Yeah, some of these pictures are super old as well. So
yeah. So I just think, I think that the reality of these stories need to be told, and people need to understand that the way that humans look can tell a lot about the human. And I think this is really why you were so valuable to the vegan community, because you looked like the picture of health. And it's very damaging for vegan communities when people who are hailed as the picture of health then add in, you know, meat back in their life. And to be fair, the carnivore community might have looked at me and said, look at Paul Saladino, he looks great, he's doing great. And then I had my electrolyte problems and my heart palpitations and added back in some fruit, but not vegetables. So anyway, there's something to be said for both sides here, but I just think that there is, I think if you look at long-term vegans, especially long-term vegan doctors, it's pretty clear that these people do not look particularly healthy. They don't have a lot of muscle mass. I've never seen a picture of any of those doctors with their shirt off or their actual muscle mass. But if you look at their neck or their stomach, there's pictures of Michael Greger that show how bloated and kind of gaseous his stomach looks. When I was a vegan, I had tons of gas. We talked about that earlier. So I just wanted to point that out. I hope that watchers and listeners won't find that to be stooping too low, but I do think it's an important contrast to make. Let's shift to talking. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in terms of like idealizing someone who looks good or who's thriving. Like there are people who've been vegan for 20, 30 years who look amazing and they're thriving, but that doesn't mean that that will work for the majority of people. Maybe they're an outlier, you know. I have vegan friends who are vegan since birth, and they're in their 20s and they're still alive. And so it's possible, but we tend, as a population, we tend to see, someone doing something and believing that that is possible for everyone. And so that's a big mistake, I believe, because there is a lot of people who even after just a couple of years experience some heavy deterioration. And yeah, but there are definitely people who are able to sustain it, but that doesn't mean that they will be able to do it for their whole life, and that they're doing it without negative consequence either.
Exactly. When you were vegan, were you aware of anyone eating meat or fish on the sly? I've heard rumors of these not farmers, but these fishermen in Alaska that send salmon to prominent vegans.
Yeah.
And it's all very sort of down low, black market secret. Nobody wants to really admit it or say something.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of similar to the fake natty in fitness that claims natural but actually takes steroids. They would never tell anyone. Like there are very few people that would know their secret. Even their own partners don't know. And so I don't have knowledge of that apart from a few people that are they seem to be vegan and they only sell vegan things, they only teach the vegan information, but they don't actually literally claim that they're vegan, but they're predominantly plant-based. And so they're eating some animal foods here and there in small amounts, they say, but they only provide vegan information. And so people think that they're vegan. They give off that's the image they give off, but they're not actually vegan. So there are a few health experts in the community like that as well. And I did hear, when I was quitting the vegan diet, I listened to a podcast with I forgot his name, Daniel Vitalis or something.
Yeah. He's been on podcast too.
Talking about in the raw community, there were a lot of people eating some animal foods on the side. It doesn't surprise me at all. Sure.
Yeah, fake vegans, fake natties, and fake vegans. It's interesting. Well, there's people that believe I'm a fruitarian, so I guess this is how it goes. And I've done mukbangs on my Instagram of showing me eat large amounts of meat and put raw testicles in my mouth. So I don't know what people want from me, but yeah, I definitely eat meat, guys, obviously. Tell me specifically what you ate today, and then let's move on to talking about kids and talk about some studies with kids, and then we'll talk about some high level stuff with your children.
Yeah. So this is embarrassing, but today was one of the very, very rare days where we went to town and we didn't have anything. So, and it's a holiday here. Everything is closed. The only thing open was McDonald's.
Oh my God.
So,
okay.
That was an extremely, extremely rare occasion where I had some McDonald's. And yeah, like I order, without the bread and these things, but it's still not the best quality. But apart from that, I've eaten apart from the meal at McDonald's, just steak, nothing else. Just steak, yeah.
Today.
So, and recently I've been eating, I'd say 70-ish, 60, 70, maybe even 80% of my calories from meat and some raw dairy here and there, fish, so animal foods essentially. And yeah, just to see how I feel doing that. And yeah, and also because I want to heal my ankle as fast as possible as well.
Fair. Are you getting any organs?
Yeah, we do have some liver here, but not that much. But I do have some supplements. We're not able to get your supplements here, but there's at least not in Norway that I'm aware of. But there's a company that sells a similar freeze-dried organ complex, so different organs, heart, spleen, thymus, all these things mixed into one pill. or several pills. And then, I take that as well. Yeah.
Great. I wish we could get Heart and Soil to you in Norway or Europe, maybe in the future at some point. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Okay. So I want to continue and shift gears a little bit to talking about kids. So before the podcast, I was just curious what the quote unquote mainstream recommendations were regarding kids and vegan diets. And so I found this article by WebMD, a subsidiary of WebMD called Grow, and it says, "Going vegan, is it a good choice for kids?" And there's a physician here, Stephen Lauer, who's a pediatrician at University of Kansas, who says, "My answer is that a vegan diet can be healthy for children, but there are several extra factors to consider." Okay. I just thought it was interesting that here's WebMD, a very mainstream outlet, saying that vegan diets can be healthy for kids. And if you read the article, basically he says this, children's calorie needs are more different from adults, especially for kids under the age of 3. They need more energy per pound of body weight. So he says, make sure that the vegan diet has plenty of calories. There are some micronutrients that are difficult to obtain from a vegan diet. They don't go into details on this. There are pros to a plant-based diet. For example, giving up meat helps cut down on unhealthy saturated fat and cholesterol. Hopefully everyone listening to this podcast knows that I would take a pretty serious issue with both of those claims and say they're pretty important. Actually, saturated fat, specifically stearic acid or odd chain fatty acids, are essential for human health. And cholesterol is a precursor for our hormones and for cell membranes. But there is this perspective, and we'll circle back to this in a moment, that vegan diets are healthy because they lower cholesterol and they avoid saturated fat. But if you look at the literature deeply, you find out that that's kind of an empty claim. So I find it interesting that this is a pretty weak article and doesn't really go into any of the details of what should be done. You can even get to page 2 here. They talk, okay, so you need to supplement vitamin B12. It's important to get enough protein. You probably need an iron supplement. They probably need a calcium supplement. So the list of supplements is rapidly growing from Stephen Lauer, saying that a carefully planned vegan diet can be healthy with long-term benefits. Okay, so that's the mainstream saying that. And then the Cleveland Clinic says, is a vegan diet safe for growing children? What you need to know about protein and vitamins. It's basically the same perspective. We've got a pediatric dietitian, not an MD here. You may want to make a few modifications. Vitamins and nutrients. So there's, I guess they say the same things. B12, iron, zinc, and calcium are the main things to supplement and to make sure you get enough protein. But again, these mainstream health authorities or health websites are not dissuading people from becoming vegan. That's a little scary to me. Let's pause there and say, what was your experience? Because you have 2 children now, and talk to me about your children's experiences.
Yeah. So, my kids, they, one of them was, born vegan and the other one was not. And my experience with that was that, my son, even though we gave the healthiest diet we could possibly give him according to what the top experts and, the doctors who are well respected in the vegan community we're putting out there, we're telling us in private, in public, and all these things, making sure the calorie was on point, making sure that we're, covering all the bases. And so even then, there were some red flags, and, I don't want to go into detail about exactly what those red flags were, but the fact is that when we added animal foods back in, these issues became a lot more, improved and, stopped progressing essentially. And so my daughter, who is 1 year old now, didn't go through a vegan pregnancy or anything like that. And so obviously they're completely different people, but she has not had any issues whatsoever. And it's been amazing. And it's kind of, as a parent, it's really hard for me. It's one of the things that I've had to, deal with a lot in the last couple of years is guilt, because, as a parent, you want to do everything, you want to make sure that you're doing the best for your children. And when you realize that what you're doing maybe wasn't the best, it can be very, very hard. And the guilt for me was very tough to overcome in the beginning. And it's something that I had to work very hard on. And I even became almost depressed for months, just thinking about what I was that I was potentially, or it wasn't potentially, I was actually doing something that was suboptimal for my own child that I love so much more than anything in the world. And also because I was promoting a message that I believe is not correct for so many people. And I kept thinking, how many parents are doing this to their children because of me? I have on YouTube, like, I don't know, like 30 million views on vegan videos or something like that. On Instagram, who knows how many people have been impacted. So, but at the end of the day, what's the most important is that they're healthy now and they're much more improved, and that I'm just trying to warn people, because this is not something that only happened to me. It's happened to countless other people out there as well.
So you've got a 1-year-old daughter. How old's your son?
He is turning 4 in in 2 weeks.
Okay. And what do they each eat in a day? I'm curious what they eat now.
Well, now they eat essentially meat. My son is not a fan of organs, so he doesn't really eat organs unless it's like, some desiccated liver mixed in, with a burger, or even, something else in a smoothie or something. That's the only way we can get some organ meats in. My daughter will eat anything. Her favorite is just like sucking out the bone marrow and that kind of stuff. And Noah, his favorite food is fat. He just wants fat. I'm like, you want some more meat? He's like, I want the fat, like, that is attached to the meat. And so he'll have all the fat. So he loves that. He's like a huge fan of fat that is, attached to red meat in particular. I'm not a big fan of chicken and these things. And so, just mainly they eat animal foods, and then a little bit of, not a little bit, quite a bit of fruits as well. And they love fruits, and very little, less and less grains and legumes and these things, and vegetables. So very small amounts, but once in a while they'll have things like white rice, oatmeal, white potatoes, beans and lentils and these things. But it's more because we live in Spain. I live under the same roof as my vegan parents, and they offer us food every single day, and we're really thankful that they make food for us. So we still eat that kind of stuff once in a while when we're in Spain, at least.
So your parents are vegan. Was your brother a vegan too?
Yeah, my whole family went vegan when I went vegan. My brother was the first one, who was 3 years younger than me. He was the first one to go vegan. He's been vegan now 9 years. And then 3 years later, I went vegan with my wife, or girlfriend at the time. And when that happened, everyone else in the family went vegan as well.
Is your brother a doctor?
He has a medical degree. Yeah, he's never practiced as a doctor, but he's got the degree at least. So I guess he could be considered a doctor for sure. Yeah.
I saw something online that he was not vegan anymore. Is that fake news?
Yeah, I think that's fake news.
Okay.
I'll be very surprised. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe he's still vegan and your parents are still vegan. What does your family think about the fact that you've stopped being a vegan? Your wife is not vegan. You're feeding your kids tons of meat and fat. You've got a 1-year-old daughter sucking marrow out of the bone like a little cave girl.
Yeah, I think, like anyone who believes that their perspective is the right perspective, they view it as wrong, or not everyone in my family thinks the same, but obviously they're disappointed because they were so proud of the work that I was doing and of my role in the vegan movement and my position and my contacts and all these things and the projects that I was involved in, the money that I was making, all these things, right? So going from, you know, leaving millions on the table and going back to being like, you know, not earning a cent at all and just being like, you know, fired from all the companies and just, you know, blasted and hated by everyone they know in the vegan community and these things, it weighs heavy on them, like, of course. And so they're very disappointed. They think, you know, I'm sure they think that we're doing a disservice to ourselves for sure. Yeah.
Interesting. That's a lot to carry, man. It's a courageous thing you're doing. I think that it's good that we can get this out there. And I think people will appreciate the fact that this is your truth and you're speaking it. There are a number of articles that I think we could add to the discussion at this point. One of the articles that you pointed out to me is this one, the Vecchi study, which is
the most cited.
What's that?
The most cited by many of the vegan doctors that I was looking for help and asking for help were citing this study as, you know, the best kind of evidence that we have that vegan diet can be optimal for children.
Right. And both, I think you and I came to the same conclusion when we read this study. Even just looking at the abstract, what you can see here is that their conclusion is that a vegetarian and vegan diet, those are quite different in terms of outcomes in early childhood, can provide the same amount of energy, so calories, and macronutrients, that would be protein, fat, and carbohydrates, leading to a normal growth in comparison to omnivorous children. What this article leaves out is any discussion of micronutrients, which could have important implications for things like brain growth, intelligence, mood, hormonal growth in children, gastrointestinal health in children, bone density. None of these are looked at in this study. So for vegan or for plant-based advocates to cite this study, I think both you and I were a little bit surprised at how cursory it is. And you can see here that the protein intakes were highest in the omnivorous group, no surprise there. And that the added sugars, they say, were highest in the omnivorous group, probably because vegan and vegetarian families are more quote unquote health conscious. That may be an advantage to being health conscious, but certainly doesn't come with an omnivorous diet in and of itself. A fiber is higher in a vegan diet, no surprise there, but as many people have now pointed out, and I've tried to point out, sometimes getting a lot of fiber isn't a good thing because fiber can decrease the amount of nutrients that are absorbed in the human body and can cause a lot of gut issues in humans. That's something that's not really talked about very frankly, or I think honestly in the nutritional space. People just say fiber is good, more is better. And I debate that strongly. So I think this is a pretty weak set of data to make a conclusion that you could raise a child healthfully on a vegan diet. And yet this is probably the best that they have. And at least the anecdotes and the other things we've shown so far, we'll show some other studies that counteract this, argue otherwise.
Yeah, and this is a study that was championed, and it's not the only one. There are other studies looking at micronutrients, but still, it's not, you know, health outcome focused. It's not cognitive development. It's not intestinal, you know, health and all these things, right? And even that study that we just looked at, the Vecchi study, the only kids that were considered wasted or stunted were in the vegan or vegetarian category. You know, none of them were in the omnivorous category. And I mentioned this publicly, and I got contacted by a vegan doctor who was, you know, trying to correct me on my mistake. And the mistake was that I didn't read the explanation the authors gave for their smaller size, which was their parents were smaller, and these things, even though that doesn't, you know, account for, you know, being wasted like or stunted. The parents that were a little bit shorter were not that short, and it was only the case for 4 out of the 8 children that the parents were a little bit below average in height. And so even if none of them were stunted, it doesn't show that the vegan diet is optimal or, suitable for all stages of life or for children. It's just a measurement of macronutrients and body weight and body height. It really doesn't, show anything of value.
And you and I did a calculation before the podcast. The mothers, I believe, averaged 5'2.5", and the fathers were around 5'6", I believe. So they were lower than average height, but not too much below Tom Cruise for the height of the males. And a lot of women are 5'2.5". And like you pointed out, the wasting of the kids and the stunting of the kids appeared to be much more severe than those slightly below average mom and dad heights would suggest. So kind of a scary thing that they're willing to normalize that. There's another study here that I think we could look at, which was this one, I believe: growth, body composition, and cardiovascular nutrition risk, which is an interesting thing. They put that in there. Of 5 to 10-year-old children consuming vegetarian, vegan, and omnivore diets. They say vegan diets are associated with a healthier cardiovascular risk profile. This is such a catch-all wastebasket thing these days. It just means they had lower cholesterol, which I would argue is a very bad thing. They weren't able to substantiate any sort of proper hormonal levels, but they had an increased risk of nutritional deficiencies and lower bone mineral density and height. So, oh no, but it's okay. They have lower LDL. That's a good thing. We all know that lower LDL is good. Interestingly, we should note vegetarians showed a less pronounced nutritional deficiencies, but unexpectedly, a less favorable cardiovascular, cardiometabolic, they say, risk profile. Yeah, that's because when you give kids eggs and milk, they actually have a healthy amount of LDL cholesterol in their body, a very critical thing for infant and human development. So what are your thoughts on this study? This is a Polish cross-sectional study. There were 63 vegetarian, 52 vegan, and 72 matched omnivores. And it's interesting how they just gloss over all the bad things.
Yeah, again, this when discussing this with vegan doctors, they debunk this study because a lot of the vegans were not supplementing with B12. I think it was 1/3 of them or something like that. And not with vitamin D either. And so they said that this is not a healthy vegan population. It's an unhealthy vegan population. And that is why the results are skewed the way that they are, because they weren't supplementing properly. But that just, my argument to that was, well, if we're advising human beings on diets, shouldn't we take into account human behavior like forgetfulness or just laziness and these things that are inherent in human beings, and account for those things when recommending a diet to humans? If we need so many supplements, like it's like someone is going to forget to give the right dosage, the right type of B12, and they're going to give methylcobalamin instead of cyanocobalamin and make all kinds of mistakes. Like, there's a lot of mistakes that can go wrong. And so even though a lot of them forgot to give the right supplementation, it still showcases that it's not optimal, and it's problematic and dangerous as well.
Yeah, I would say clearly not optimal. Vegans had lower fat indices in all regions. That's bad. That's the wasting. Both vegans and vegetarians had lower bone mineral density, bone mineral content. Vegans were shorter, had lower total LDL and lower HDL. They had lower HSCRP, which is interesting, but they had lower protein, lower iron status, lower serum B12, and lower 25-hydroxy vitamin D without supplementation. And they had higher homocysteine and mean corpuscular volume. Homocysteine is an indication of B12 and or folate and or riboflavin deficiency, with higher being worse. And a higher mean corpuscular volume would indicate either folate or B12 deficiency. So there's, vitamin B12 deficiency, iron deficiency anemia, low ferritin, which is indicative of low iron stores, and low HDL were more prevalent in vegans, who also had the lowest prevalence of quote unquote high LDL. So it's just, this doesn't look good for vegans. I don't understand how vegans also ignore all of the evolutionary and anthropologic context here. Do we think our ancestors were really doing this? Are we really so sure? Or we really believe that we can break from what our ancestors have been doing for so long? when I visited the Hadza last year, they didn't give their kids any supplements, and they generally grow up pretty darn hale and hearty. I think that it's clear that an evolutionarily appropriate, species appropriate diet for humans should be intuitive and easy. And I love that kids really give us an indication of this. What do your kids prefer to eat? Meat, sometimes organs, often fat, and fruit. It's so simple. And I want to just keep going down this rabbit hole a little bit and talk about yet just a single one of the nutrients that I've never seen mentioned in any one of these vegan studies. Let's talk about choline. This is an article called Choline, the Underconsumed, Underappreciated Essential Nutrient. And this is in humans, but it's incredible. Where is the choline on a vegan diet? And any of these studies, does Cleveland Clinic or WebMD say, actually your vegan kids are going to be low in choline. Vegetarian kids might not be if they're getting enough eggs and milk, but a vegan child is definitely going to be low in choline. Well, why do you need choline? Well, to make every single cell membrane in your body, neurons, brain, acetylcholine, neurotransmitters. It's pretty crazy stuff. And here we, see this just talked about very clearly for even adults and kids, but is there any discussion about choline in the vegan community?
There has been in the past when proponents of the paleo or ketogenic diet talk about it and talk about how vegan diets don't have choline. And it's generally debunked by them saying that soy and cauliflower have choline. So those two foods.
Soy and cauliflower?
Yeah. Apparently those two foods are the answer to that question.
So you have to feed your kids tons of cauliflower every day and tons of choline every day.
Yeah, soy based.
Soy-based choline, which is clearly not as bioavailable as an animal-based form of choline. Okay. So I think that I don't have that study pulled up right now, but we can pause the podcast and pull it up. But there's, it's pretty clear that vegans are low in choline, even with all of the, even with as much of the,
I'm sure they're getting soy. Yeah.
Yeah. Even with cauliflower and soy smoothies all day long, they don't seem to get enough choline in their diets. So this one, I think, is the one that I wanted to pull up. This one. Usual choline intakes are associated with egg and protein food consumption in the United States. So this study from July 2017 found that choline, an essential nutrient for critical roles in several biological processes, including neuronal development, cell signaling, nerve impulse transmission, lipid transport, and metabolism. They found that protein food, meat, poultry, and seafood consumption increased choline consumption, and adults 19 plus who consumed eggs more likely to meet their gender and life stage adequate intakes as compared to non-consumers. But basically, if people didn't consume eggs or protein in this observational study, there were substantial deficiencies in choline, which is a critical nutrient for humans. So I think it's pretty sketchy. So I found, though I shudder to use Healthline, 16 foods that are high in choline. They call the AI 550 milligrams or 425 milligrams of choline per day. They say 90% of the US population does not meet this recommended intake. I would agree with that. Pregnant and breastfeeding moms need more than the women. First food is eggs. So eggs are the best source of choline. And I will show a study in a moment showing that the choline in eggs is more bioavailable. So this is the other thing that is often left out in plant-based discussions, is the notion that all forms of these nutrients are not equivalent. So one egg is 147 milligrams of choline. 2 eggs per day is 54% of the RDA for most people. The egg yolk is where the choline is. Organ meats are the next thing. 3 ounces of beef liver is 240 milligrams or 65% of the RDI. So if you got some beef liver, you don't even have to get 3 ounces. You can get 1 ounce. You can get heart or something. You'll get a little more choline. You'll also get things like iron, B12, folate, copper, vitamin A, selenium, which are deficient in plant foods. We've got caviar, which is fish eggs. You've got fish. Number 5 is shiitake mushrooms. So I don't know how many in the vegan community are feeding a full cup of cooked shiitake mushrooms. That's quite a big amount, but that only gives you 116 milligrams. So to meet your RDA with shiitake mushrooms, you would have to eat 5 cups of shiitake mushrooms a day. That's to meet the full RDA, assuming that the choline in shiitake mushrooms is bioavailable in the same equivalent as animal foods, which I would debate based on the study that I'll show in a moment. Soybeans, they say 1 cup of soybeans, and these are roasted soybeans, is 214 milligrams or 40%. So you'd have to eat 2.5 cups of soybeans, which is an enormous amount to get to the RDI. Beef is another rich source of choline. So a 3-ounce serving of beef is 115 milligrams. So a child could eat 3 or even 4 or 5 ounces of meat per day. I wonder how much a kid is going to eat, but that's going to give them even more choline. Wheat germ is not a food for humans. I don't even know why people consider that a food. 3 ounces of wheat germ. I don't know anyone who's going to eat. That's a huge amount of wheat germ. Chicken and turkey, again, animal foods. They say cruciferous vegetables, cauliflower. So 1 cup of cooked cauliflower has 13% of your daily choline needs. To get your RDA for choline, you would need to have 7 cups of cooked cauliflower per day. Okay. Wow. 7 cups of cauliflower a day, John. You ate that all the time. Almonds. I mean, then we're into like the plant foods, which are just a joke when it comes to choline. These are obviously the lower sources of that. And I want to point out this. Natural choline from egg yolk phospholipids is more efficiently absorbed compared to choline by tartrate outcomes of a randomized trial in adults. So if you compare the choline in an animal food to the choline in a supplement, or presumably I would also posit a plant food, you're not going to get the same amount of absorption in this choline. So the same is true with protein as well. Vegans will say, oh, we have the same amount of protein as an omnivorous diet, but we know from things like a digestible indispensable amino acid score that protein is only half as bioavailable. So I don't know. I mean, do you know any vegans who were eating, let's say, 2 to 3 cups of shiitake mushrooms and 2 cups of soybeans every single day? That's what you need to get the equivalent of just a couple of eggs and maybe a pound of meat in your diet for choline, assuming, again, bioequivalence.
Yeah, I mean, if you're into fitness, like you end up eating a lot of soy, so like they'll be they'll be meeting the requirements based on that, but that doesn't take into account the bioavailability and that kind of stuff, of course. So it's hard to know, but definitely not that much shiitake mushrooms and cauliflower. I mean, yeah, that's I don't think I know anyone who's eating that much. No.
That's yeah. That would be
interesting how they're comparing the choline eggs to a choline supplement, because that goes back into the B12 as well, because there's this famous video of Dr. Greger talking about this vegan baby that died from being breastfed, and not that the baby shouldn't be breastfed, because that is what babies for that age should be exclusively breastfed, but because the mother's milk was deficient in B12, the baby died, and he confirmed that was his opinion, that is the truth, and it wasn't the first baby and definitely not the last one. If vegans don't get their act together, that's what he said directly. And then there's this other video where he also goes and says that on the few studies that are done in terms of absorption of B12, there are studies showing that some people are not able to absorb the B12. And so how do you know if you're getting enough if you don't know that the supplement is being utilized correctly? And we know that blood levels of different things don't really mean that the body is utilizing those certain nutrients the way that they're supposed to be. So, it's kind of very sketchy.
It's definitely sketchy. So I mentioned this article earlier in the podcast. I just want to show it for people again, if they're curious. It's Meat Helps Every Bite Count. It's a recent commentary on the dietary guidelines recommending meat as an ideal first complementary food. Starting at 6 months, infants need a variety of nutrient-dense foods, including foods rich in bioavailable iron and zinc, et cetera, et cetera. And they, in this article, go on to note that there are pretty high rates of iron and zinc deficiency in infants. I just think this is because mothers are not eating enough meat in general, but meat can really help with all of those nutritional deficiencies in kids. And unfortunately, alongside of that, they'll recommend things like legumes or iron fortified rice cereals for things including iron and zinc, which is a problem because we know that zinc is going to be very poorly bioavailable in a package that contains lots of phytic acid. Something like beans are a laughable amount of zinc. This is sort of the story when it comes to plant-based minerals and other nutrients is they'll say, oh, look at how much zinc is in beans. And then I can actually show, and I did show in this podcast last week, that when you combine oysters containing zinc with beans, the absorption of that zinc is cut in half. If you combine those oysters with a tortilla or wheat, and how many kids eating vegan diets are getting wheat, there's essentially zero amount of that zinc from one of the most highly bioavailable, most highly concentrated sources of zinc, that being oysters, in these kids. So even if kids are fed a zinc supplement who are vegans and they're given something like a tortilla, none of that is getting absorbed. And we just talked about choline. We didn't talk about creatine, carnitine, carnosine, anserine, taurine, vitamin K2, biotin, riboflavin, heme iron. The list is enormous. It's insane to think that you could get children to optimal levels of health by feeding them vegan or plant-based diets. And I think that it's at this point, we know enough that I'd say that it's really clear to say that meat is optimal food for babies and kids, and to not include it is to put your kid at a disadvantage.
Yeah, my experience tells me the same thing. So, I really hope that parents who are, questioning this thing, maybe you don't want to quit the vegan diet yourself. Maybe you are not ready to take that step, but you have children, and you're not sure if it is optimal. I hope that the information that we're putting out here is going to be useful, because, and we make the mistake of thinking that we already have everything figured out in nutrition science. I mean, nutrition science is essentially at its infancy. There are going to be more and more things coming out that I'm sure we're going to be lacking in the plant-based diets that we may not even be aware of right now. And so, the fake confidence that we have is really alarming, and the faith that we put into these vegan doctors and the trust that we put into them is something that we should all question for sure.
What did the vegan doctors tell you about healthy user bias?
So in terms of the veggie study, for example, I was having this discussion 3 days ago with a vegan doctor, and I was saying that, it's strange that these kids are, the stunted and wasted kids, and the kids who are not getting enough micronutrients in another study that I was talking about, were facing this issue when their parents are going to be way more likely to be healthy. And so the healthy user bias, does play a role here as well. And his argument was that the healthy user bias works, against vegans, not, it doesn't favor vegans, because vegans would be less health focused and health oriented than omnivores, because vegans tend to be vegan for ethical reasons, not for health reasons. Even though on the veggie study, there's a questionnaire showing the motivation for their children and their family's dietary choice. And I believe it was like 30% of vegans cited health, or at least 20 to 30% in vegetarian as well. And on the omnivore kind of column, it was just zero. It's just like nothing. So obviously, like even that study that he said kind of shows that vegans are ethical vegans, was saying the opposite. So I think it's a lot of cognitive dissonance that these doctors themselves cannot believe in anything different, because they have so much invested in their career, in their perspective. They put so many claims out there publicly that going back on their word, it seems like something impossible.
I've heard the same thing. I mean, I think a lot of people would look at what you've experienced and frankly see that as terrifying. I've had vegan doctors contact me anonymously or, in confidence via email and say that they work at some of the largest vegan health quote centers, unhealth centers in the country, and they've seen massive decline in their health and they want to start incorporating meat. I mean, I had a woman contact me who worked at one of the largest vegan, quote health centers. And she said after 17 years, her health was failing and she was really struggling, and she couldn't imagine what would happen in the community if she said publicly that she wasn't vegan anymore. And so I think that a lot of people fear, death threats. You got death threats, man. Yeah. I haven't gotten any death threats yet. Maybe I have, and I just don't know about it because I ignore them. But I'm sure there's vegans who wish harm to me. But that's not an easy road for people to imagine going down with honesty and candor.
Yeah, and it's sad because you know, who knows how many of these people silently quit, right? You know, we there are a few people like myself who are, you know, very vocal about their change in perspective, but seeing that backlash, like I understand, like I had people saying like, you know, why don't you just, you know, keep quiet about it? Like, why didn't you just stay silent and just focus on a different kind of video style? Like, you know, focus more on, I don't know, spirituality or personal growth or emotional health or psychology or something, instead of, you know, announcing this, because it's so extreme. So I understand how it puts people off. And that's why, you know, I laid out, you know, I stopped talking about it, because, you know, maybe I figured that maybe I'm discouraging people from, you know, speaking publicly about this by showcasing the extreme hatred that happens. But I believe, I'm a true believer in expressing your truth and being your authentic self, no matter what happens. You know, no matter if your own family dislikes you, no matter if they, you know, you become an outcast, no matter if you lose, you know, friends, family, no matter if you lose your income, your job. Like, I had to go through all these things, but nothing feels better coming to the other side of this whole thing. Nothing feels better than just speaking from the heart and being my authentic self, because, you know, pretending to be something that you're not, or you know, self-censoring is horrible. It just doesn't feel right. It's not how we're supposed to live as humans. And so it may be scary, but it's the most powerful thing you can do is to speak your truth. And I really hope that people can get there eventually.
I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you for speaking your truth, brother. Where can people find more of you speaking your truth?
Yeah, so I've been uploading on Instagram. I haven't uploaded a YouTube video in 8 months, and I'll upload one, you know, probably next week. You know, a day of eating or something, which will be interesting to see.
Can't wait.
But Instagram, I'm most active there, so you can find me at Jon Venus, and on YouTube as well. You can just search my name, Jon Venus, Ex-Vegan, vegan, whatever.
Vegan airhead. Jon Venus. Exactly. You'll find him. Well, thank you for speaking out, brother. It's so interesting to hear your experiences and the insider perspective. I'm so glad you're thriving and your family's doing good. And I do hope that we get to get some waves at some point in the future, or at least get into the sun. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's a pleasure. And yeah, thank you.